I was losing to my other roommate. This is round 2 of the Millersville Open in Millersville, Pennsylvania, at Millersville University, and it's game in 30, delay 5, but it still counts as a classical rating. So it still counts towards our classical rating, but it's game in 30, so very short games, very quick, and I'm playing my roommate Akil. And this is my first time ever playing him. I played my other roommate Ethan a bunch of times, but first time playing Akil. And yeah, I did pretty badly. I made a huge blunder, and with that being said, let's hop right into it. Akil played E4 or D4, and then I played D6, and he played E4. Now it transposed to the Philidor. I played Knight of 6, he played Knight C3, and I played E5. And he's played Knight F3, and we've talked ad nauseum about how he thinks taking on D4 is bad. And yes, it's not considered as good as Knight BD7 here. So White is just developing their knights, and this knight on F3 is attacking E5. So White has 2 attackers on E5. So you have 2 approaches. You trade on D4 to relieve the pressure on E5, or you guard the E5 pawn one more time with the move Knight BD7. And we've talked a lot about how this is the move. This is the move we should be playing. Knight BD7. But I like to just take on D4, and I think there's less theory here, and less things to worry about. Like, genuinely. Whatever. So even though Black has less space and looks a bit more passive, it's usually just fine for Black, and it's not so bad. But yeah, we've talked about how it's not very good. A lot. So he plays bishop c4, attacking f7, developing a piece. I castle, he castles, and I play c6. With the idea of expanding on the queen side or playing d5 if he stops me. Well, he stops me with a4. And all class players play a4. They never allow the queenside expansion. You could totally allow the queenside expansion. You could play like rook e1 or something like that, allow b5, and then the game goes on. But usually players with the white pieces, they don't want to allow counterplay on the queenside like this. Class players don't, and probably masters don't either. Most people don't like to allow counterplay. So they play a4. So, Akil played a4 in this game. And the downside of this move is that you're not developing a piece. You're not developing any pieces with this move a4. And so I play d5. And I give myself an isolated queen's pawn, but I'm going to finish development and have an okay game. That's the idea. So bishop d3 is the first new move of the game. I think Nicola Corbellini played bishop b3 against me. And so bishop d3 is a new move, but the idea is to control f5 and to play knight f5 and to get the bishop pair. So now Akil has won the bishop pair, and he's playing against the IQP, which is pretty reasonable in and of itself, but nothing that Black really needs to worry about. Black is totally fine in this position. I play rook e8. He plays bishop g5 here. So oftentimes in the IQP, the ideal situation is when the bishop is on g5, pressuring f6, which inadvertently pressures the isolated d pawn. I play bishop c5. So one plan that White can try to employ against the isolated queen's pawn is to control the square in front of it. And if White is not controlling the square in front of the IQP, well, then it's time for me to control the square in front of the IQP. And because the bishop on f5 is loose, he can't just trade and try to win the pawn on d5 because his bishop on f5 is hanging. And it's important for the side with the isolated pawn to control the square in front of it, because now at some moment I can potentially push the pawn to d4 and maybe push the pawn to d3 and trade it off. So that's one thing to keep in mind about, when you have the isolated queen's pawn, is that you want to control the square in front of it because you can often push it forward. He plays queen f3. It's kind of, pressurizing d5 more, preparing to pressurize it more with putting a rook on d1, x-raying the queen if that happens, potentially putting more pressure on f6 if this bishop moves. So a very good move, very decent move. But now I just play rook e5. And I give that as a really good move because I don't really see that many other alternatives. One alternative maybe is playing knight d4, but though it looks pretty miserable. Knight d4 with the intention of winning the bishop pair back. So queen h3 or something like that, you know, threatening to play bishop takes a f6. Then I could take, and after queen takes, there's pressure on f6, pressure on d5, rook d1 is coming. So bishop here, rook here, and I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing, folks? It doesn't look that pleasant to me. So, so you know, black really has to worry about endgames here because they have the isolated queen's pawn. If you do have the isolated queen pawn, you don't really want to go into an endgame with just rooks because then your isolated pawn is more felt and it's more easy to be a target. So you want to play for activity, which I like playing for activity. So you know, isolated queen's pawn kind of fits me. So after rook e5, he plays queen h3 here, threatening bishop takes f6, and here I play a horrendous move at h6, which giving it a blunder. So I annotated this game. This is a no engine recap until the very end of this video, and giving h6 a blunder might be a little bit too harsh, but I think it's kind of warranted because after bishop f4, black just has to go back, and after rook d1. This position is getting bad very fast, and this rook on a8 is running, doesn't have any squares, and the bishop pair is really felt. The move I did was bishop d6, which I would usually give as an inaccuracy or a mistake or even a blunder, because knight takes d5 happens, and I just missed the move. Like I forgot that like the knight guards f4 when I first played. Like after I took my hand off, I was like, oh shoot, yeah, the knight guards f4. But it's just very uncomfortable. Like if I don't play bishop d6, what am I gonna play? If I play a move like knight b5, like knight b5 here, you know, I in c2 right now it's guarded, but also defending d5 one more time because the pawn's on a4, so it can't be kicked out as easily. This is very dangerous. Knight b5. If knight c7 would be a fork, and this rook cannot defend c8 because the two bishops control it. So then I can play bishop b6 here to guard, but then now c3 could happen after knight moves back. Then knight e6 here, attacking e8, attacking b7. If I try to defend, then there's b4 here, threatening to trap my bishop. Well, actually, no, maybe it's not threatening to trap my bishop. Maybe white can just immediately go knight c8 here, defended by the bishop, attacking my rook, attacking the bishop, and winning the bishop pair. So let's say like rook, I don't even know where to go. Rook e8, then takes, and this just isn't super pleasant. In this case, maybe it's not super bad. Maybe it's not super bad in this case. Like d4 isn't good because a5. Yeah, there are ways that like it looks kind of dangerous. For example, queen b5, bishop d3, queen d5, c4. But maybe it's okay. Maybe it's okay. Maybe it's not that bad for black. Maybe, oh, of course, white doesn't need to go c6 here. White can also, after bishop b6, white can just go immediately knight d6, rook e7. And then, so maybe this is the better way to play. Knight c8, rook e8, knight takes, pawn takes. And it's the two pointy hats versus the two knights. So white should be better, although I just like looking at it now, I mean, there's still a chess game to be played. But the fact that white has an easy target on d5 and the bishop pair, white should be significantly better. So bishop d6 though just immediately gives away a pawn. And yeah, now it's time to play for activity. I'm down a pawn. What to do now? Be active. Queen a5, attacking a4, eyeing f5, and I thought he would go bishop d7. If I take, he gets a rook on the 7th rank, pressurizing f7, attacking b7, and which doesn't look very good. So I go rook e4, attacking his knight. He takes my knight, I take back, and now he goes knight d3. His knight was hanging. He brought it back, and now I go rook e2 here. If I take the pawn, he goes knight c5, forking me, which isn't very pleasant. So that's why I move my rook first, attacking the pawn. And here, I think I make a small inaccuracy. Small inaccuracy, a major inaccuracy. I go rook a8. And my idea was, okay, I have really good control of the e-file, and if he goes b3, I'm going to go queen c3, and it's not super easy to defend this pawn. It's actually impossible to, and I thought I was doing pretty well here. But then knight f4, attacking my rook, attacking my queen. And now I don't get my pawn back. He's still up a pawn. I might be okay. Maybe I can go rook d2, but then maybe rook here. And then if we trade, maybe I can go here. But then maybe there's like, c4 or something like that. And if here, there's here. But maybe there's here. Oh, in this case, there's back rank checkmate. So probably this endgame is probably fine if knight f4 and I take and he takes. But I really wasn't sure. I really wasn't 100% confident that like queen c3 and knight f4 and queen takes h3, like if this was okay for me. In hindsight, because my rook is on the 7th rank or the 2nd rank, like it should be good for me, or at least equal, but I wasn't confident enough to go into it. So I just went rook d2, preparing to double up on his 2nd rank. And then he went knight b2, so threatening knight c4. So I went queen b4, avoiding the knight c4 fork. He goes knight c4, I go back, and now he goes queen f3. And if I go like knight d5 or something like that, knight e3 is kind of annoying because he's forcing a trade, and he's up material, so he wants to trade. And this knight disconnects my defense of my rooks, so I have to go rook d2, and then he could just take. And it's not super happy time for me. Not super happy for me. So that didn't look super appealing to me. So I went back with my rook, defended the c6 pawn as well, and he went h3, and I went knight d5 with the small little trap that like, hey, I might be able to go knight c3 and knight e2, or knight f4 and knight e2. So he goes queen d3, which was just a blunder because now I go knight f4 with tempo. I get the rook, and now I'm just up in exchange for a pawn. And from there, it's a simple win from here. I step 1, trade the other rook. He can't avoid the rook trade, so and I don't want to take with my rook because then he has a perpetual, which is not very good for me. So then he goes f4 to avoid more checks on his king. I have a queen e6, blocking this diagonal, defending my pawn. He goes back. Well, he goes over, attacking c6, attacking a7. I go queen d4 here, attacking f4. So if he takes my pawn, I take his pawn, and he gets checkmated one way or the other. It doesn't really matter which way you go about it. He's going to get checkmated like so. So if he plays queen f2, guarding his pawn, and then I go rook e6 here. So if you still take the pawn, I still take with check, and we retranspose. He moves his queen over. I go rook f6, attacking the pawn one more time, and the check on d8 doesn't do anything. My king has a safe square on h7, and my queen guards this diagonal pretty well. So goes g3. So step 2 is step 1 was trade the other rook. Step 2 was force him to make a concession with his king safety. So I go back to I move my queen back, attacking his queen, and he should probably try to just trade and hope that my low time is the bane of my existence. But even if he did trade, the game could proceed like this, where he tries to block the open file, but then I play f6 and I get my rook in, and I win at least one pawn, hopefully a second pawn, and I should be doing quite okay. So he doesn't trade, goes queen c3. I just go rook e6, and he goes knight e3, attacking my queen, opening up his queen on c6 for whatever that's worth, and I just go queen f3 and pinning the knight in. Not much he can do. I played a queen takes e3. I didn't have to. I think rook takes e3 is a little bit more precise. A checkmate happens more quickly because queen d8 check, there's no follow-up. So I took with the queen, though, and he gave a check, and then he went h4, and I gave a check. He went king h3. I went h5 here, sealing in his king on this side of the board. He gave a check. I played g6, and now he moved his queen over, trying to get a perpetual, but I just give a check, king's force back, and rook e2 is checkmate. So let's back it up. This was a blunder. But what move was I supposed to make? G6 was the move. Akil told me after the game, like, did you consider G6? I was like, no, I'm stupid. I didn't consider G6. And then FIDE Master Carl DeMeltz also said, like, in your game against Akil, did you consider G6? I was like, no, I didn't consider G6. G6 is very good. G6 is very good. It attacks the bishop. If the bishop moves, I take your other bishop. So you have to take. Then I take. Then you move your bishop back. And look at this position. Look at this position. He no longer has a bishop pair. I have an active rook. I can double up very quickly. My bishop and queen are pointing towards f2. I have good control of the d4 square. I can play knight to d4, knight to b4, pawn to d4 at some point. Not now. And I'm doing quite good. Like, one plan I could do right now is rook a d8. And if you go queen d7 or something like that, well, now d4 looks kind of appetizing. Although that is not necessary. I still don't need to do that move. I could also just go knight b4. I could also just go rook e7 to guard b7. That's also totally reasonable. I have to be a little bit careful. Knight takes d5. It's kind of annoying, actually. That's actually super annoying. Okay, wait. Queen d7, there is that tactic. Yeah, that's actually kind of annoying. Queen d7. Maybe I just sacrifice this b pawn. Does the b pawn really matter? I go d4, attacking the knight. Oh, but the queen guards the knight. This is kind of tricky. This is more tricky than I intended. Maybe now I can go rook e7. Yeah, queen a8 check, king b7. Actually, if queen here, I could go here. Could go here, and suddenly the queen is actually trapped. No, the queen is not trapped. Freaking knight takes d5 again. This is more tricky than I thought it was. So I would have to contemplate, what's the best way to proceed. Like, maybe I do go knight b5 immediately. I don't know. I don't know what the best way to proceed is. But it was not h6. It was definitely g6. G6 was definitely the move here. To force him to get rid of the bishop pair and just be active. Apparently I have to be careful with the queen d7 counterplay. I'm not really sure the best way to approach it, best way to defend against it. But anyways, that being said, I ended up winning the game anyways. And with that, I enter round 3 with 1.5 out of 2. And with that being said, I'm going to hit the game review, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.